Hi everyone. So I have like my little decoration things. And the crazy thing is that like having these decorations in in my room, and I have my like Maslow pyramid. Um, so these little tiny lights, they emit a lot more heat than they look like it. And so like if I wanted to take them outside, but then I just didn't want to draw so much attention to the house. Oops. Um, and so I just wanted to share like my experience about. I really need a haircut. I just wanted to share my experience about writing about something from the past and then focusing on contributing something for the future while being productive in the present. And so, a funny story is if you ever go on my Instagram, you'll see a picture of me, and you just kind of have like sticky fingers. If you ever watch Home Alone, they have the sticky bandits, and so they're these two guys, and Macaulay Culkin ends up, what is it called? Macaulay Culkin ends up finding himself homeless in New York, and the sticky bandits are there, and the sticky bandits like walk by this like Christmas donation thing, and it's like they have this like tendency to look like they're giving something, but then they're really taking something. And so the sticky bandits have like these sticky fingers, and they wrap tape around it, and so it looks like there's tape on their fingers, like in case they get in a fight, but it's sticky, so it's on the opposite side. And so when they're like, "Oh, I'll donate," and so they end up like putting their hands in the bucket, and they take their hands out, and their like hands filled with like cash and stuff. And so, anyways, back in the day, I was like a sticky bandit, and so I totally forgot where I was going with this. But anywho, I wanted to say that focusing on the past. Oh yeah, so focusing on the past, present, and future. I came to a place where I kind of doubted my faith, and when I doubted my faith, I recall a time when I had swiped tarot cards, and so I ended up swiping these tarot cards at a bookstore, and I got so good that when I would go on my like grinder dates, I would read their tarot cards. But because my spirituality is kind of anti tarot cards, what I would do is I could see the signs of my spiritual guide saying, put those cards away. So I would read them, and I'd like, so your future's saying this weekend you're not gonna have, blah blah blah, whatever. And so then I would do it for myself, and you go like past, present, future. And then when I do past, present, future for myself, I would always get to a place where I was like, and then when I do the final card, I was like, oh. And so if you ever watch the Broadway musical with Carmen Jones, it's with Dorothy Dandridge, and Dorothy Dandridge is the African American equivalent to Marilyn Monroe. So I was always really more of a Marilyn Monroe fan, not more so because of her work, but because of her life. So a lot of celebrities, when they put out a catalog of work, I'm never really interested that much in what kind of work they're doing. What I'm interested in is in who they are behind the scenes, how they got their name, and what is it about that person. And so, for example, Marilyn Monroe, real name is Norma Jean Baker. No, so I'm getting aside from myself, but I wanted to share how at this point, writing something about the past, my memoir. So my memoir is going to be about myself, and so it's not anything about my career. So most people will be like, kind of sure they know myself. Lua, my name is Lua. They're so sure that they know myself in terms of, oh, he's a kind person, or he's really good at what he does, or he's a good person. And so I I wanted to gear away from that because there were a lot of big elements in the past where that good stuff came because I had to suffer something, and the only way for me to be that good person was that I kind of had to pretend. And so not only did I have to pretend, it, it's weird. So I have the memoir part where I'm sharing stories. You see like the posts from my journey from being homeless and on my own, and then you see past, and then you see the present, which is like what I'm doing in this video now, and then you see the future. And so in California, we have the California State Standards, and I heard this news report that ethnic studies was going to be a requirement for high school graduates by 2029. So we're in 2022. We got about 6 or 7 more years before California makes ethnic studies. And so what ethnic studies is it's the study of your specific culture and ethnicity. And so if you had ever gotten confused or like, oh, what is he doing? It was particularly from a field type of study or work that came from a specific person. So for example, if someone was like, oh, what are those Samoan people doing, and why are they eating out of a can, or why are they eating that gray thing? And so I mean like the gray thing as a potato, and the potato for us is called a taro. So in most island cultures, the terrain is very non-productive, and so as a grace for a lot of the bigger cultures, they kind of travel around and buy the stuff from the smaller cultures to help them thrive, because usually they're a smaller remnant of a group, and there's no way for them to like get back and forth. So a lot of the times our community doesn't have anybody or doesn't have money. So a lot of times people are like questioning, it's like, oh, why do we have that? And so that information can't be found in public schools today, because the history books are structured based on American history. So American history has a history with pretty much every country, but their day-to-day requirements are based on what they feel can make a society productive. And so obviously, if you are great at basket weaving with leaves, and eating taro or eating spam, you're just going to be a great doctor one day. But that's not the way it is. And so, having taken note from the 90s, early 2000s to the 2010s to 2020s, the society has become a lot more ethnic and cultural, and they're expanding on sharing more about what these other cultures have and provide, and what they've been contributing to society. And they know this because of anthropologists. And so we have in Samoa, we have a woman, there's a big statue of her in one of the villages, and she's very popular throughout the village, and her name is Margaret Mead. And so when I had been working in the fields and blah blah blah, I had taken an ethnic studies and anthropologic approach in getting to learn the people in Arizona, and learn the people in the homeless and addicts community, and relearn the people in Orange County, because here in Orange County it's almost different in the sense that on the outside it looks different, on the inside it's definitely different in comparison to the last time. So for example, you have a modernized Latino community who has access to services and education that wasn't available for the previous generation. And so on the outside they look the same, the city and the landscape look the same, but on the inside they're not the same as the they're not the same as the prior generation. And so those usually come from being able to understand the shift in the cultures, but then also the importance of ethnic studies and why ethnic studies is so important. And so in ethnic studies, to really get to know somebody is that they are one individual inside their home, and then they have to be somebody else when they're in a group setting with other cultures in America. And so when they're doing that, a lot of the times cultures either acculturate, assimilate, or basically they diminish in the quality of their culture. And so the term is whitewash. And we had this issue in my apology class where the white kids, there's like 6 of them or 7 of them, and it was me, and then the other brown kid who looks Mexican but I'm not, and then there's a bunch of Mexican kids. And so when they talk about these ethnic studies groups, and it's from a white person's perspective, or it's from their perspective. And so when you're sharing your American experience, a lot of the times ethnic groups have issues with white people because of their having to feel like they're letting go of their culture to quickly assimilate to that 9 to 5 thing. And I had kept in my heart when the next day when my teacher came in after, like the shoulders and the heads of all the white kids were like, and she goes, "Hey class, I just wanted to say I was in my car on the way home, and I thought about, what I talked about in class, and I just wanted to say to the white kids here," and she, like, literally the American kids, and she was like, I didn't want you to feel bad about the history." And so what I mean about that is that, like, a lot of times white kids will feel like they have to own the past moving towards the present so that way they can appease to the other cultures around here. And so they end up feeling like, dang, I'm sorry you had to get sent back to Mexico, or I'm sorry that you were in a concentration camp for the Asians, or I'm sorry the Samoans, nobody knows who you are, or I'm sorry to the African American people for what happened. And so in those conversations, the white lady, you see these like educated, good white kids who are in Orange County, and the white teacher is like, dang, like, and I'm like, oh my god, they're like about to like cry, they're embarrassed because it's like they have to, you see all these other brown kids feeling empowered about their culture, and then you feel like white kids are like having to say, okay, it's my fault, I'm so sorry that you're in our country that we let you come live in, and stuff happened, and so they ended up like putting their heads down. And so anyways, I think about that event, and I think about when I gather information, not personal information, even though I know that this town can be kind of like a gossipy town, and like everywhere I go it's like people know information about me because they talk, and it's just something that being a part of a minority group that made it and validates other majority groups that have been oppressive and successful makes majority groups that have not been successful feel like I had to pick a side, or they feel like that I'm picking a side. But what I'm saying is that, like, for someone like myself, I have family members who are of all different ethnicities. And having family members of all ethnicities isn't why I choose a side. Like, for example, when I was in Arizona, this white man comes up to me and he's like, "Hey, I was sitting by myself and we're in a rehab, and there's all these tables, and everybody's assigned like a mentor." He comes up to me and he's sitting at the table and looks at me and goes, "Can I ask you a question?" And usually when a man asks me a question, it's usually, "Are you gay?" And it's gotten so much better personally, especially with men, because they're so kind, and most of them are, at least in my experience with a lot of American men, they rarely ever make me feel like, hey, you're you're disrespecting my being. For women nowadays, it's still really difficult for women. I'm not sure why women feel that way, being that a lot of us can become a support for them. But one of the white men, he looks at me and he goes, "Hey Lua, when you go to prison or when you go to jail, who do you sit with?" And I go, "Well, last time I went to jail, we were all like in a loop, and we kind of just bunched together, and I just kind of just fell asleep and stayed by myself." And it's like, because looking around, it's like usually the white people stay with the white people, and the black people stay with the black people, Mexican people stay with the Mexican people, and we go about our schedule. And I go, "I don't know." And then he made a joke, and I thought about how us in like smaller groups, like the LGBT group or other unknown groups who are very comfortable in our culture and in our identity as children of our parents who have migrated here or who have come here because of refugee and war and all different types of ways, so that way we can feel safe. We come here because we know who we are, and we don't want to change that. And so I didn't really have any issue when I was at the Salvation Army, nor when I was at Phoenix Freshman Mission, nor when I was even in the streets. The issue always came with someone feeling uncomfortable as if I was taking something from them. So for example, if I was like dating a Latino man, the Latino community would feel deprived or feel threatened because they felt that that's our child. And then having like raised a lot of them, I'm like, "Bitch, where were you?" And then being with black culture, there's like a hierarchy of like powers. And then being with white cultures, it's like, having to go about saying, "Oh, this and that," and then being aware that sometimes they feel obligated or such and such. So I'm always mindful about that when I'm creating my own ethnography of curriculum to contribute in addition to the memoirs. So when I do something like, or say something like, "Oh, Marilyn Monroe," or Troy Polamalu, or Storm Polamalu, I'm saying these things in essence of that we only see the star, but we don't see that the star is a drift from the sun, or a fire, or a gas, a fire that learns how to burn on its own. So in essence of us seeing something so bright in such a dark world, we don't know where it originally came from, but we know that it's a part of something that is constellation, and that constellation is something that helps us guide who we are and where we go in this world. But we don't know exactly if it came from the sun, or if there's other suns, or if it was there first and the sun came from it, and whatever. We don't really know these things, but we do know that about human beings, that we have DNA, and we also have information, background information. And so Brene Brown talks about emotion, and she talks about emotion, and she says that in emotion it's 4 B's, and I really only remember the 3. And she goes, emotion for human beings is 4 B's. It's biology, it's background, it's biology, background, biography, and behavior. So it's the 4 things. So if you are threatened by someone's effeminate behavior, or you're threatened by someone's masculine behavior, or if you're threatened by someone's angry behavior, there's a biology there, meaning that it's something that's within they're born with it. There's a biography there, it's something that's their own story, that's between them. There's a behavior there, that's something that they had to grow up to learn and be. And there's the there's biology, behavior, by background, and then there's a background, meaning that they something that we don't know about them. And so having pursued some of these things, I wanted to come from a place where I was completely not only vulnerable but in my emotions, because yesterday I was talking about, or the past few days I've been picking up the pen, trying to type a story about a man who I met. So if you look at me, you know how I'm kind of beautiful. I'm like a hot mess right now. But a lot of times for men, aesthetics is an important thing. It's our bait, basically. And I say bait is that we we lure women with our good looks. We lure women with our car and our money. And so, for example, I was watching this TV show called What Would You Do? And they had all these people go to this place and ask for help. And so they would go and ask the security guard or whatever, and the security guard would be like, hey, yeah, you go that way, and you go that way, or you go to that. And there were these ugly people who were deemed ugly, and basically they didn't get the help that they needed. And then they went to, they had like really sexy models, go ask for help, and they were getting the help they needed. Now, when they came out with the percentage was 5%. So they say basically 5% that, and it's like a really good 5%. They say that all good-looking people have an advantage, a 5% advantage among the next person in being treated better and kinder. And so I was thinking about my experience. I totally lost my train of thought, but so I was thinking about my experience here, gathering evidence and wanting to come from like a vulnerable place. I totally forgot what I was going to say about that 5%, but either way, having to, that's right, okay, so having to write my my past down, writing, facing like going forward in my future, when it comes to a specific person, I always keep like that's the person who is this, so that's the person who is that. So for me, I always treat everybody pretty equally. I probably treat everybody the same. It's like, hey, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. But then I only ever put anybody on a higher pedestal than anybody else in terms of like good looks or worth the second glance, like or I would like brush my teeth and like shower and like feel like there was only one person in this world. And so I posted him and his name is Ben, and he's been almost kind of like a project in the sense that it's been difficult to express it because I put him on such a huge pedestal. And so and I shared the story, I think I already shared it about how like in West Hollywood, everybody knows me as like my work life, where they're like, oh, that's Marilyn Monroe, and then he knew me as Norma Jean Baker. So I think writing these things, it's really difficult to put it on paper because we don't, we kind of move forward, but for our community, for our gay community, we don't really know how to express these things because a lot of times we were seen as dangerous, or we were seen as someone who was taking advantage of society or taking advantage of somebody else, or possibly a threat to that, and we are never really that, and we're never really how the world saw we were. So being able to like say, hey, as a child growing up, when everybody else was picking on me and saying, you're a threat, I'm like, no, I'm just beautiful. And then like, growing up and working, it's like, you're a threat. It's like, no, I just never stop working, never not working. And then, going into my own community and the LGBT community, I'm like, you're, quiet. It's like, finally I get to express that. And so the healing process is not as easy as I wanted it to be. I really thought it would be a lot easier to let go, but I know that letting go, it's important. So I just want to say that I'm gonna put like some bookmarks. I'm gonna make these bookmarks, and once I make the bookmarks, they're gonna be incongruent to the subjects that are above here, and so you can download them. And once you're able to download them, neglect and abuse is one of them, but then also letting go is also the last one. And so whatever it is, if you've been neglected and abused, and if you're learning to let go, you're not alone. Click the follow button, and I love you guys. And so just it takes time. Just don't be afraid.